So today we are sitting with Sylwia, who is our Polish residency expert, and we've been speaking with her for a while. She's given us some good news about our own situation, which we're going to talk about at the end of this video, because we're actually going to be looking for residency here in Poland due to descent. So stick around and make sure you wait for that. And we'll be right back, and we're going to hear from Sylwia about how you may be able to live in Poland if you're looking to become a resident here or to come to Poland to stay permanently or temporarily. Sylwia, you've been working on residency programs for foreigners, for people from the United States, from Europe, and other countries around the world. Can you give us a little background?
Sure. Thank you so much, by the way, for invitation to your channel. Regarding Crackspire, so Crackspire is an agency that I started actually more than 4 years ago, beginning of 2018. Why Crackspire? Why actually interest in the immigration in general? Well, this is something which I was doing for the last 8 years, actually, advising on residence permits and work permits before for one of my other companies, which was actually IT based here in Krakow. We hired lots of foreigners because we couldn't find IT specialists in Poland, and that's basically was my starting the adventure with the immigration procedures here. How can Crackspire help? Well, we definitely help with any type of residence permits, any type of work permits. And also other expat issues, which lots of people who come here have no idea, which is very natural, about administration, how to arrange, for instance, driver's license, how to arrange the identification number, address registration, all these little things we can support as well.
If somebody wants to come to Poland, and let's first off look at non-EU citizens. If somebody wants to come from the United States, and maybe it's a little bit different for Canada or Australia or somewhere else in the world, what are the options for somebody to come here? Are there retirement programs? Do they have to have investing into the country? Or what are the paths to enable somebody to come to live in Poland?
So there are different options for people who want to start living in Poland. Of course, the most popular one is to work here. However, if you already passed this period and you would still like to live here, well, the government always asks you about what is your reason to stay in Poland. And during the procedure, we need to provide as much as possible evidence for this reason. So if you are a pensioner from US, so you have your regular stable income. Mm-hmm. However, this is not sufficient to stay in Poland for longer than 90 days. It's not sufficient for Polish government. You also have to provide other reason, such reason which is actually the closest to just someone who wants to stay in Poland and just enjoy life here, is, for instance, learning Polish language. It's useful anyway, and this is something which government would take into account when they proceed your application. Of course, it's easier if you have family in Poland, because this is also can be provided as another reason for your residence permit. Any courses which last for longer than 3 months will also be fine, which will be also accepted. I know that in a lot of Schengen countries, actually, if you have insurance and a stable income, that will be sufficient to stay here, to basically obtain a residence permit. This is not the case in Poland. You really need a reason to be here.
So to be clear, if somebody is on Social Security, they're 65, 68 years old, and they have a steady income, but they want to live in Poland longer than 90 days at a time. Right now you come 90 days, then leave for 90 days, then come back for 90 days, which some people can do. if you wanted to come here and learn to speak the language and enroll in school, you can stay in Poland while you're in classes. So if you're going to school for a year and a half to learn Polish, you can stay in Poland for a year and a half.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so furthering your education in Poland, even if you're a senior citizen and you're a retiree, if you wanted to live an extended amount of time in Poland and rent a house, or even, I guess, can they buy a house in Poland as a non-citizen?
As a non-citizen, you cannot really buy a house. You cannot buy land in Poland unless you obtain permission from internal ministry. However, for such permission, you do need already your residence permit secured. So actually, technically, it is not possible for someone who's just coming based on non-visa regime, so for this maximum of 90 days, to buy a house. However, it is possible to buy an apartment here,
So
which
you
doesn't
could
include that.
Okay.
buy an apartment if it doesn't have land. So like where we're staying in our Airbnb was probably fine when we're in one of the buildings with multiple units.
That's right.
And I know one question someone's going to ask, do you have to pass an exam in Polish in order to continue the residency for the because is it an 18-month program, or what is it for the language program?
It's actually any type of language course that you choose. It can be. It's important that school or organization which provides such courses is able to give you an official letter that you follow the courses.
Okay.
It can be for it shouldn't be shorter than 3 months. It may be longer than 1 year and a half. However, just be aware that the residence permit you're gonna get for maximum 1 year and a half, not longer, based on this reason. Of course, you can prolong it afterwards if you continue your courses.
Okay.
And for those of you that have not been following Julie and I, we've been to a lot of different countries and we've discussed issues with being in and out of the Schengen. And unfortunately, Poland is part of the Schengen zone, which allows Americans 90 days in the entire group of countries at a time, and then you have to leave for 90 days, and then you can come back again for a new 90. So countries like Serbia or Montenegro are not part of the Schengen, and you can go and spend 90 days there and come back, and right now even Bulgaria. So we've kind of discussed some of those ideas of how you can maybe balance time between two different countries, if that's something you're choosing to do to come here and want to spend as much time as you can in Poland.
Yes, so basically based on the bilateral agreement from 91, you can, as a US citizen, you can stay here 90 days, but it is not 90 days within 180 days. It is just 90 days which renews after you come back. So basically, after you come back from traveling to other country, and what is interesting, also to other Schengen country. If you travel, so let's say you came to Poland as a US citizen, and you don't want to apply for residence permit because you didn't subscribe, for example, for this Polish classes. You don't have other reason to really prolong to really apply for your residence permit. What you can do if you want to stay here is when the 90 days comes close to expire, you travel to other Schengen country. It's very important that you get an evidence from the Schengen, from let's say you travel to Germany, you booked a hotel there, you booked flight. It's very important to keep this evidence for the border control if necessary during the check. This is completely sufficient. If you leave to a country which is outside Schengen, of course, they will give you a stamp in your passport, and this stamp serves as confirmation that your actually 90 days in Poland is going to be renewed now once you enter.
So, to be clear, an American, this is for Americans only, on the bilateral agreement, you can leave Poland for 1 day and then come back and have a new 90 days of time in Poland.
That's
now,
right.
My concern is because if an American were to leave Poland after 90 days and go to a Schengen country and check in over there and come back, if they got in trouble in Germany, would they say, you are now in violation of overstaying your welcome because they might not recognize the Polish bilateral agreement, or is it maybe safer for them to go to a non-Schengen country and then come back?
Here I have nice news for you because especially for you guys now I was studying this bilateral agreement, and the period in Poland that you stay in Poland does not count into the 90 days of Schengen. This is clearly stated also on the border guards website, which I was actually having sent in the past to my clients when they were asking me a similar question. If you want to leave, for instance, like it's your 89th day and you want to you're going to Germany, for instance, for one day, it's important to stay at least one day outside Poland, by the way, so 24 hours. It's not that you can come back the same day.
Okay.
Yes. So it's best, like if you were leaving on the 2nd of the month, to maybe come back on the 4th of the month, so you have that full day out and you know you're good. So plan like a 2-night stay somewhere.
And how often can you do this? Because I'm sure people are going to ask this, right?
Forever,
There
right?
is no limit. There is no limit about that.
Perpetuity.
And as mentioned, very important information is that Schengen, it does not count into the 90 days for Schengen countries. This your stay in Poland. So, for instance, you enter to Finland to Schengen from US. You stay there 1 month, then you come for 2 months to Poland, and you leave again to Finland. You still can stay 2 months in Finland. Actually, now I'm thinking probably 2 months, let's say. So just for your understanding that this period in Poland does not count into the limits for Schengen.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So that's great news for Americans that would like to live in Poland then. So this bilateral agreement, I think, is very esoteric. There's not going to be a lot of people with this knowledge and sharing this. So it sounds like Poland is actually an easy place for Americans to come and live and spend time and I guess invest in an apartment if you wanted to buy a place here and be able to call it home. You just know you have to leave outside the country once every 90 days, and that's fantastic.
Wow.
Yes, Poland is considers US as a partner in lots of things, but if we talk about benefits for US citizens, one of the biggest ones as well is the possibility to open one-person company without basically residence permit, without long-term residence permit, how it is for other countries which are not in EU, for other citizens, non-EU citizens. So one-person company. Why is it so important? Well, lots of people who come here, they want to open a business, and based on the business, they also legalize their stay. However, for most of people, so for non-US citizens and for non-EU citizens, that means that they will go for the full limited liability company, which includes lots of accounting, full bookkeeping, which includes way more control from the financial government, and which is actually just more expensive also to maintain. Already for starting capital you need 5,000 zloty for limited liability company. However, the one-person company, which I think in other countries it's just a freelancer, you work as freelancer. The bookkeeping is way smaller, you just you don't. Well, it's way simpler to open. Also, it's just simply via online as well. So it's if somebody asks me, of course, depends also for which activity. But usually I advise to open a one-person company instead of limited liability company for people like lots of US citizens who come here are English teachers. So for such activity, definitely one-person company is better than this full structure of limited liability company.
So when you have a company here in Poland, then you can then register a vehicle and get a Polish driver's license because you would have a residency based on that company. Is that correct?
Yes, but based on any residence permit, you can also purchase. Purchasing car, I think that you can do even without residence permit. Something that I would still have to check actually. But changing your driver's license, registering your car actually in Poland, if you bring it from other country, definitely requires residence permit. But this residence permit course can be also based, for instance, on the language course. Yeah.
Okay, so you do a language course and then be able to register your vehicle.
Definitely.
Okay, so a bilateral agreement, if you're just doing the bilateral agreement, leaving every 90 days, you won't be able to register a vehicle on that, so you'll have to use your public transportation if you're American, because it's kind of difficult to ship a car over here and stay with US plates indefinitely. So you would have to probably look at doing different types of transportation. Julie and I, we do a Bulgarian car right now. So let's talk about other routes for people to come into Poland. Are we missing anything? Or we have the companies we have coming in as a student.
Mm-hmm.
We have the bilateral agreements.
Yes.
Is there anything else major before we go into residency by descent?
When you apply for residence permit here, you have government gave you 16 reasons to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
But it also includes studies at university. It includes voluntary job. Now we have a lot of voluntary clients who came here to do voluntary job for Ukrainians, for instance. So it includes lots of programs. It includes delegated employees. However, if we talk about specific group of people of certain age who have already stable income, who are not interested to do any other job, I think we are pretty. That's actually about it. That's what we spoke about. So the company, the language course, or any other course. Nothing comes to my mind now. But if you would like to do a knitting course, which is for over 1 year, you would just have to say why specifically in Poland. It can be, you can motivate it. That here is, for example, I don't know, some retro. I saw that your last movie mentioned polka dance. If you want to learn how to knit polka dresses, for example, it's something that is definitely a motivation to do it in Poland and not in any other country.
That's fantastic. So the part that gets Julie and I really excited is I am Polish. I've got 4 great-grandparents that are Polish, and we are putting together a residency request package through Sylwia based on my residency so I'm trying to get permanent residency. And if you check out our coming up videos, you're going to see us researching and finding documents of my great-grandparents that are here. So I have 4 great-grandparents from Poland. I'm actually 52.4% Polish. And so we are looking at residency here in Poland based on my descent or my heritage, and Julie would then be coming in as a temporary resident. Can you elaborate for the folks here that maybe looking at wanting to do something similar, because there are 10 million Americans, from my understanding, that are of Polish ancestry, potentially.
Right. So what's most important from the immigration office perspective is that you have sufficient documents to show that indeed you have a Polish background. And Polish government specifies how far exactly you need to go. Basically, you need at least 2 Polish grandparents. Great-grandparents, exactly. This is something to, I guess, remake. So you need 2 Polish great-grandparents or 1 Polish grandparent. And what type of documents you need to show? Definitely you need to make sure that the government knows you are the child or your grandchild or grand-grandchild of those people. On documents from your grandparents, from ancestors in general, it's important that documents show they were indeed Polish. It can be birth certificate, it can be a registry from church. That time actually not it was common to rather write it in the books of church instead of creating official birth certificates, which we have nowadays. But it has to clearly, those documents have to clearly show that your ancestors were Polish and that you are their grandchild or grandchild.
Now let me also go into something about the Great Partition here in Poland. Poland for over 100 years ceased to exist. Unfortunately, Russia controlled part, Austria controlled part, and so did Prussia. And so as we've been looking for our documentation, while our ancestors say Poland and we have confirmation that they were Polish, when we're going to pick up their documents for the birth records, we're having to deal with the Russian language and Russian because this is part of the area where my great-grandparents were from on these occasions where we were looking for our documents. It was governed by Russia until 1920. And so if you're looking for documents before 1920 for your Polish residents, it may look like they're Austrian, Russian, or Prussian, but they can still be Polish based on where they were living or born.
That's right, and it's great in that case to count on genealogy specialists like the one you were using. Mm-hmm. I spoke with the lady as well, and she seems very, very recommendable.
I'll put her information in the video description as well. So Ancestry has us excited. So if we get approved for the permanent residency, then I have the potential to apply for citizenship within 3 years. And that does not mean I have to give up U.S. citizenship. So for those of you thinking that I would be changing out my U.S. citizenship, it means I would have dual citizenship if everything goes right. Now there's always the chance that we get turned down. So we're going to be sharing our path to residency or our path to being declined with you. So stick around for those videos. One last question before we conclude. If somebody were to come to live here in Poland, whether it's through a bilateral agreement, through permanent residency, or opening a company, are there tax implications based on somebody if they were to come here to become a Polish paying tax resident? If somebody were to come to Poland on the bilateral agreement and they were receiving Social Security, where Poland on many cases will tax worldwide income, if they're here on the bilateral agreement but not staying under a residency permit, does that mean that they would not be getting taxed on the Social Security, or would there be tax on their Social Security if they were here as a student?
Well, definitely if they stay in Poland over 180 days, as far as I know, they will have to pay the income tax.
180 days consecutively, or
within a year?
Within a year, okay. So that would become something that they'll want to deal with you with regarding taxes. If somebody is living here year-round but leaving for 1 day at a time every 90 days, then they'll need to look into the tax implication.
Definitely so, yeah.
So everybody, as a reminder, Julie and I, we're traveling the world. We're trying to see what it's like to live in other countries, other locations, and we're traveling with our dogs. Now, that might be changing soon, as we're discussing here, but we hope that you're going to subscribe, that you're going to give this video a like, and that you're going to follow Julie and I as we travel the world and travel Poland. And until next time, have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.